We are now transitioning to the second part of our evening, which is a fireside chat with Hazel Applewhite and Celia King. And Celia is the Executive Director of Leadership Newark. She serves as the Chief Executive Officer for Leadership Newark, Inc., a nonprofit organization in the state of New Jersey. Her responsibilities include the overall management and oversight of budgetary matters, fundraising, numerous leadership development programs, and personnel. A major responsibility includes the development of curricula, which has an emphasis on public policy enrichment and civic engagement for both adults and youth. Celia is responsible for ensuring each program is of high quality, relevant, and timely based on the state of affairs nationally, statewide, regionally, and locally. Additionally, she strives to expand and improve the network of civic and community leaders in the greater Newark area. As an advocate of civic participation, Celia takes her responsibilities seriously in inviting the public to be informed and actively engaged. She feels community building, as well as a commitment to social and civic responsibility, requires the development of servant leaders through community leadership programs. Prior to assuming her current position, Celia worked in the field of healthcare as an administrator for more than 10 years, as a senior level executive with oversight in behavioral health services, substance abuse, and ambulatory care. Ms. King is a former councilwoman from Maplewood, New Jersey, where she served for 8 years and served for 4 years in the capacity of deputy mayor. One quote which resonates strongly for her is one by the cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead. And I thought this was great because I knew the first half of this quote, but I've never heard the second half. So the quote is, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Always remember that you are absolutely unique, just like everyone else." That's great. So please welcome Celia King.
Well, you've heard from her earlier, and you've probably interacted with her on a number of occasions, but let's just talk about this wonderful person. Hazel Applewhite has been a cornerstone of Ironbound Community Corporation for over 13 years, initially serving as the Chief Financial Officer before being appointed CEO in early 2022. With a deep understanding of ICC's programs and operations, coupled with her foresight and innovative thinking, Hazel has driven positive change and expanded ICC's programs and services. She is passionate about fostering positive community change, eliminating racial barriers, and empowering community members to achieve their goals and full potential. Hazel believes that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging should be integral to all community structures. She holds a BS in Business Management and an MBA. Currently, she's pursuing an Executive Master's of Public Administration with an expected completion date in May 2025. So if you all aren't keeping her busy, school certainly is. Come on up, let's have a conversation. Okay, wow, well, we heard a lot about the organization and how it has grown from the staff. They were awesome. Let's give them another round. The information shared, I learned a great deal about ICC from listening to that. So if we start off and take a look at the history and legacy of the organization, could you share a bit about the early history of the organization and what the original mission was 55 years ago?
Sorry. Hello. Hello? Great. Technical difficulties, sorry about that. To respond to your question, thank you. 55 years ago, as we think back to that journey of what was actually in the minds and the spirit of folks who were leading then. One was education, right, has always been at the forefront of ICC, knowing that literacy for our young ones is important because that sets the foundation, right, for them to becoming, right, citizens and prominent citizens in society. So it started off with an early learning center. Women, because women are always the backbone, right? Men are important also. It's not taking away from men, but women have a special uniqueness with us, right? A desire for our children to thrive and to ensure that we're doing all that we can do. So it started with a group of women daycare making pre-K, right? And we're still, doing work in pre-K currently at our state-of-the-art early learning center that's located on Newark Avenue, New York Avenue rather, where we now expanded that we're doing early childcare also. So it's a 0 to 5 campus, where we house a little over 200 children as young as 6 months under the care of Jane Mello, who you've heard of. So there's the education component, the early literacy component, getting our children prepared for kindergarten, which typically at kindergarten our kids go into the public school system. Making sure that they're socially and emotionally prepared, right, for that journey. Also, by doing that, right, these mothers noticed that there was asthma. And where was that asthma coming from? So it was the pollution, right? You had, pollution in the river, the Passaic River. You also had, as you've heard from, the folks on the panel, the incinerators. You had the airplanes, the noise from the airplane. So that sparked advocacy because they could smell it, feel it, taste it, and something just wasn't right. So there's where the advocacy component of ICC came in, right? To advocate that we live in a healthy, safe environment. ICC was talking environmental justice, environmental justice, right? Inequities in environmental justice before it was a thing, because now we know more and more. We're even in academics now, right? There are environmental justice courses, but 55 years ago, Ironbound was talking environmental justice, environmental injustice, right, and environmental racism that happens in Black and brown communities that low-income folks live in. So I do hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Well, we know that Ironbound Community Corp has been kind of ahead of the curve from its inception, which is why I guess it was founded at that time. So, of course, there was mention of leadership and that Vic is the second person to run the organization. So there were very few over this period of time, which is amazing. But as we still think about history and legacy, can you talk about what you feel was impactful that previous leadership had taken on and you've now inherited, or you've seen the growth?
Sure. When I think about the vision of the past leaders, because that's, sitting in this position and being in this position for the last 2 years, I think back at, what exactly, and I have the opportunity, right, and I am, happy that I have the opportunity to actually have access to the past EDs, right? To have conversations with them, which is very important and is a lesson to be learned also, right? From organization.
Do you actually get that opportunity and take full advantage of it?
Full.
Wonderful. That's
Full.
a blessing.
Text, call,
fabulous.
and, we can speak further about that, but I want to stick to the question, right? Their impact was building an ecosystem. And let me explain why. When you think about ICC and the holistic approach we take, it's a little campus by itself. You're starting with the children, but we also are strong believers that in order for a child to be successful, the family must be successful. Now, let me break it down to you. I'm bringing my child to school, but I don't have food on the table. I don't have a job, but you want me, when my child gets home, to focus on doing homework with my child. Is that really possible? Because I am out trying to make sure that I put a meal on the table, right? That I have a job, that I'm fighting for a job. So with ICC, the approach that we take, and I'm not going to go deep into the services because you had Charles talk about that, is that we want to make sure that the whole entire family is supported. When you walk through our doors, we talk about the immigrant population that we serve, which is a huge number of immigrants, right? And a lot of undocumented. But that does not stop ICC. We look at creative ways that we can ensure that economic empowerment is available for all, no matter your race, where you come from, your nationality, your ethnicity, whoever you are, ensuring that financial empowerment, right, is at the forefront. Because in order for a family to be good, right, there needs to be an income on the table. That mom has to be working. That dad has to be working. Their mental health needs to be good. They need to have food on the table. So we do food insecurity work where we have a pantry that serves the community 2 times a week. We want to make sure that our youths are learning. And Deidre talked about it. So you get where I'm digging when I'm talking about an ecosystem.
The ecosystem. So
that's
it
right.
Stemmed from
Yes.
your predecessors and
Yes.
continues with you.
Yes.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yes. So the impact that their vision and the impact from their vision is ensuring that everyone within that family was served. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, very good. So let's kind of talk about your personal journey. We now know this ecosystem has been established and you've been with the organization for a while, but now you are the CEO. You're the first female. You're a woman of color. And tell me, what does that mean to you personally and professionally? And it's kind of a milestone, I would say, but do you believe it's a milestone?
Absolutely. And it speaks to, again, the forward thinking of the agency, forward thinking of our board, right? I fail to acknowledge that we have Bill Good in our presence, who's also a board member. It was an intentional decision for the board. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that has to be reflected in your staff. And having a woman and a person of color serving as the CEO was a reflection of our community, right? Our community is made up of, Black, it's made up of Latino, people of color, immigrants, and that was kind of like the trajectory that the board was looking at, right? We want to, make sure that we are moving and evolving into the future. And I think it was intentional when the board made that decision. And yes, it's a milestone, and it's a milestone for me. It's a milestone. I always say my ancestors are stomping and clapping, right? To see that, they actually built, you understand, another generation that was able to meet this milestone of, being a CEO. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a dreamer. So I do agree with Deidre that dreaming is important. I've dreamt all my life. I remember sitting in rooms with my nephew, and I would say to him, you know what? I'm gonna have a Lexus. And he looking at me like, we don't got cheeseburger money, but you're saying that you're gonna drive a Lexus. And then I would see Italy on TV, and I'd be like, I'm going there. And they'd be like, girl, would you shut up? We just trying to eat this cheeseburger right now. I have just always been an individual that was steady on the things that I wanted as an individual, and nobody could stray me from that. So education was important to me. I'm still being educated, and I'm okay with that. I could, I think I'm gonna stop after the MPA, right? But I believe that, for me personally, that education is the key. I believe that you can dream and you dictate your future, not your circumstances, right? I always tell people I had a son at a very young age, but that didn't stop me. I was fortunate enough to have the support of my family, right? But that did not stop me.
So do we have to pay attention to this alarm? Okay.
That did not stop me from pursuing those dreams, right? So one thing I would say to, just young folks, that it is important for you understand, to know what your future is like. And it's important for you to put the work in, right, to make your future possible. And it's great if you get the support. And it's great if you get the resources. And sometimes you have to go out and look for those, right? Because my resources didn't necessarily come from within my home. It came from teachers, friends. I remember my first job that got me into accounting was a stranger. I just met him, and I've always been, okay with asking questions or just talking to people. So I just started talking to him, and he said, you know what? I'm a CFO, and I want you to come down and I'll interview you. And he interviewed me, and I started doing like AP and junior accountant work. And that's how I fell in love with accounting. And from there, it was like the sky was the limit with the accounting stuff because I loved it, right? So yeah, I hope that answers your question, and that tells you a little bit about me, right, the individual. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a wonderful opportunity to get that personal insight. And the dreamer that you describe is, something that we can all relate to. Because we want to move forward, and having that conversation with others, it's just impactful at all levels. So we talked about the fact that you've been at ICC for about 13 years before assuming this role, and can you just share how that may have impacted how you went into the position and developed a vision for shaping the trajectory from this point on?
Sure. So I would say, I want to make sure I answer your question correctly. I've sat at the leadership table for many years with ICC, and I've had, I've had the opportunity to do that. So coming from the inside, it was easy for me to identify what was the next steps with ICC, right? I had the relationships internally. I had to build the relationships externally. I understood the culture, the staff, the opportunities, what's going great, what's not going so great. So it was like I had my foot down and I was ready to go, you know? And that's because I had like a step advantage, you know, from being in the agency for so many years, and also from being a unique CFO. You know, I don't know if there are CFOs in the room, but one good thing about me being a CFO is I really partner with the program. So I didn't just sit there and, you know, do your books and make sure internally you're in compliance. I wanted to learn about your programs, right, from a very high level. So therefore, we can make decisions together, right? And if I understood that, okay, I'll give you an example, right? The disability rate is going up in our children, Jane, and we're sitting down and we're talking about that. When you come 2 weeks and you say, well, listen, I need you to work the budget so I can get a mental health professional, you know, I would be like, okay, I can do that for you, and by the next day you would have it, because again, we've been having these discussions, and I understand that the disability rate has been, you know, climbing with children due to, you know, whether it's the pandemic or whatever issues we're having, right? So I think for me, it was, you know, pretty, I think, easy for me to just pick up and kind of like, you know, incorporate my vision into what I thought the agency should be doing for the next, whether it be, and, you know, as a leader, we have a tendency, oh, you're coming out with a 3-year vision or 4-year vision, right? Again, for me, it was, we were coming out of the pandemic, right? So whatever vision we had to be, you know, navigated a little, right, to deal with what was happening through the pandemic. So it was taking a step back and readjusting, right, as we were coming out of the pandemic, and then thinking about, okay, how do we move forward, right? What does our work look like for the first year, then the second year, and then the third year? And I hope that answers your question.
Well, it sounds like you feel that you had an advantage because you were able to get a glimpse of everything in your former role as CFO.
Yeah, and relationships is very important, you know, because coming in as a new leader, you have to build those relationships. You got to build a relationship with your staff. You got to build a relationship with leadership, right? Those relationships were already there. And in many cases, I had folks saying to me as we were going through the transition, you're going to be the new CEO. And I was like, well, who made that announcement? Do you understand? Because we're just going through a transition, right? But I had folks who had a lot of faith in me, and I truly appreciate that. And that also came from staff. So that's where also I feel bonded and committed to this, because I had staff that really believed in me, and that's important.
And that's beautiful. That's what a welcoming. You know, your built-in cheerleading squad. That's nice. So let's move into kind of growth and expansion of ICC. So I noticed on the website it talks about the phrase "from cradle to the grave." So that's pretty powerful. You know, I was like, ooh, okay. But what does it mean to you, and how do you see that commitment reflected in the work of ICC?
Sure. Cradle to grave, we're serving the children, and we're serving the seniors, and we're serving everyone in between to ensure that we're empowering them to meet whatever goals they need to meet, because goals are not...
So wait, the seniors are not in the grave yet, though.
No, they're not. They're not in the grave yet. You're absolutely right. But when I think about that, that's what I think about. I think about our holistic approach and our entire family approach to just, you know, helping our community members to thrive and whatever that means for them personally. And I don't see us shifting away from that. It is our model. And it's embedded in the culture of ICC, so I don't see any time in the future that we're going to be shifting away from that.
Okay, beautiful. So how do you prioritize what new programs or services you will add as you look at growth and expansion? I mean, we sat here and in these 55 years, you know, from a child care center to everything that it does, is there more to do?
There's always more to do. Once you have your ears on the ground and you're listening to your community, and this is another thing ICC does very well. Decisions are not made about programming from me sitting up and just looking at some data on the computer and saying, oh, we're going to do this now, right? I'm actually talking to the staff that's on the ground. My directors are speaking to the staff that's on the ground and understanding what are the real issues that we need to respond to. So I'll give you an example. We know immigration is going to be one now, right? So discussions are already on the way at ICC about how are we going to address this disaster that we're about to see? How are we going to help our community members? Because again, as a visionary, you have to foresee things happening, right? So that's how we approach programming, by responding to the needs in our community. Obviously, it's the day-to-day, it's the education, it's the advocacy work, it's the domestic violence and so on. But if there's no domestic violence, there's no need for us to have a domestic violence program, right? We're just not going to have it. And, you know, folks walk through the door and we say, oh, we have to pivot and shift to whatever the immediate need is. So, you know, during the pandemic, domestic violence became, you know, wow, it went from anywhere from 20% to like 50%. It jumped, right? Because folks were in the homes together, folks were stressed out.
We need time apart, huh?
Yeah, we do need time apart. You understand, if your marriage succeeded COVID, then I'm bonded forever. That's just me personally. I'm like, my husband is my guy, and he's my guy forever because I was home every day, and we were up in each other's face every day, and we still love each other. So I'm saying this to say, right, we respond to the immediate need, and we learn those needs from the folks who are in the community and not us basically, you know, kind of saying, you know, these are the needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, so we have 5 minutes left, so we're going to jump to the future. And the vision that you have. As you look ahead, what are some of your key priorities for the organization over the next 5 years?
Sure, economic development, economic empowerment, assuring that folks have jobs, they have really good jobs. And when we talk about Black and brown folks breaking the cycle of poverty, right, building assets is one. And how do you build assets and financial stability is by having work. Being able to work, being able to be business owners, small business owners, large business owners, right? Building partnerships, however you want to do it, that's important. So that's, you know, at the key front of my vision, obviously our environmental sustainability, right? And continuing to advocate for, you know, non-polluted community. As we see, climate change is real. Despite what anyone thinks or what anyone continues to say, right now I could be in shorts. Because, and typically, we're not in shorts or, you know, or light jackets now, right? So, you know, continuing to do advocacy around the environment, continuing to be in coalition, because we cannot do this alone. And one of the things that ICC has done well, as Nancy talked about for many, many years, is being in coalition. We never try to do this alone. We do it with our partners, whether it be locally, nationally. We do national work where we're, you know, getting together with coalitions at a national level to ensure that we can get the impact that we want. And not only thinking locally, also thinking statewide and also thinking federal wide. You know, looking at our youths and empowering our youths. Our youths are our future, right? The folks that we have in our classrooms are our next presidents, doctors, entrepreneurs, so we need to invest into them, right? So often, like, think about it, we just went through a presidential election, right? But they were like, there is no good candidates. Why is that? Succession. You have to, as leaders, have a vision, and part of your vision has to be succession. It's like what Master's Program 101, they teach you in leadership, right? So that's also important that we, you know, focus on our youths, focus on empowering our youths, making sure that they, see people that look like them. That's important, right? Representation is important,
Absolutely.
right? And then I could do this, and you can do this, and we can do it. So that's, also part of my vision. And obviously, community health and wellness, ensuring that our community understands, what the health issues are, and we're bringing those services to them, whether it be partnering with, the various hospitals, Clara Moss, UMD&J, on just locally, because sometimes our community members are afraid to leave the community. So bringing those, services to them, which is, preventive care, get your blood pressure checked, diabetes, you have certain ethnic groups that they're just, prone to this, right? And educating them to understand so their life cycle can be longer. So that's a few of my visions, right? I can go.
They're big, they're huge. That's going to keep everyone busy. Get ready, staff. So I'm going to ask you, as we are beginning to wrap up, to reflect on the past couple years in your role as CEO. And what would you say has been the most rewarding experience?
It is a blessing to wake up every day, right? Because some of us are not promised to wake up every day, so I don't take that for granted. So waking up every day, being able to see the transformational impact that ICC has within our community, and working with such a dedicated group of staff. When I say dedicated, right? The amount of services that we do, the impact of the services, folks always ask, well, how do you guys do that? And it's not, I am the leader, but behind every leader, or in front of every leader, however you want to do it, right? Because I'm not
Sometimes
stuck.
right beside.
I'm really not stuck. Beside, in front, however you do it, right? You have to have a group of people that have the same shared vision as you do. Shared and collective vision is very important. And as a leader, one of the things that I think is an amazing quality, and definitely needs to be a quality of a leader, is being able to have folks, actually join in with your vision. Following the vision is great, but it's even impactful when you have folks that actually believe in that vision, because then they put more and more into it. So I must say that waking up every day and talking to my staff, being around my staff,
And then
celebrating
your
the
vision
wins, and
is-
also celebrating the opportunities, because opportunities, we can learn from them and celebrate them too, and learn from them and move on. I think that is what really, really just makes me feel good, and I do feel good, right?
Okay.
After 3 years. Yeah, 3 years? Yeah, 2 years.
2 years. Yes.
I do feel good.
All right, so now we're going to close with you giving an inspiring message to your, what do you call the people that come through? Not clients, but what did they say? Community members? Your community members, your guests, your funders, and your staff. What inspirational message would you like to give them as they look forward to tomorrow with you?
Sure. Wow. Listen, we're dealing with some tough times now for some of us, right, with the election. But what I want to tell you is that civic engagement and sticking together, being in community, talking to each other, building coalition, and showing up. It's very important to show up. Showing up for each other, showing up for our community, that's very important. And anything can be overcome as long as we go together, not going by yourself, but going together. And that has been the history of ICC, right, to go together. So those are the inspirational words that, phrase, however you want to put it, that I would say. I would say that, let us, look at things and strategize at things and do it together, call each other, have meetings, right? And try to, tackle, right? The opportunities that we see that we're going to be faced with for the next four years. I hope. Yeah.
There you go. And that is your leader. Thank you for the conversation.